Hey, what's up, everybody? Guy here. People are wondering, how did the 49ers meeting with Brandon Aiyuk go? Most people by now have seen Brandon Ayuk's Instagram comment from midday on Tuesday, June 25th, a comment about a story in which originated with Adam Schefter saying that Washington and the Niners had talked about a trade and they decided not to do it, meaning the Commanders. Aiyuk wrote, but I thought the Niners was never trying to trade me. Well, considering that came, at least reportedly, after the meeting, I think it's safe to say the meeting didn't go the way that Brandon Aiyuk may have wanted, because it was June 24th, which is Monday, that Adam Schefter said Brandon Aiyuk is meeting with the Niners today. And then on the 25th, Aiyuk says, but I thought the Niners was never trying to trade me. A few layers to this I want to get to, but first, don't forget, you can go to heyguy.co right now. That's where you get updates on the 262 hats and the Hey Guy hats, and you can send me a mailbag message. If you're watching this on a device, I guess anything but your phone, then you can use your phone to QR code up in the corner as well, or just go to heyguy.co. That's heyguy.co. All right, let's get back to Aiyuk. Speaking of heyguy.co, I got this question from Michael at heyguy.co. He says, Guy, do you ever give your own top 5 position by position take, who you believe each Niner player might rank league-wide, NFC only? Example, tight end George Kittle 1, who's number 2, et cetera, et cetera. I don't love lists for the sake of lists, and I don't particularly care about positional rankings in most cases. This, with all due respect to the tight ends. I like tiers better. But if you want a list, here's a list. Here's the list of the top 3 people miserable with the Brandon Aiyuk story. Number 3, you and me. Number 2, John Lynch. I'm not including Kyle Shanahan because Kyle's probably in Cabo zooming in for that meeting. And number 1, Brandon Aiyuk. I know this started kind of funny on the internet. Brandon Aiyuk make a comment here, make a comment there, do a little skit with Jaden Daniels, try to get a little momentum. But the problem with playing that game online is eventually what happens is you end up a little too online. And that's part of what's happened here with Brandon Aiyuk. Now, for years, people are like, I'm using less Twitter. Instagram's the place to be. I use less Instagram now. I'm on there a couple times a week to respond to some messages, not because it's negative, just because I get stuck on there. That's kind of the idea. I spend most of my time on YouTube. But here's the problem for Brandon Aiyuk. Watching YouTubes would not be a great solution. I think the algorithm would figure out, let's kick Aiyuk some Aiyuk videos. Here's a little Kruger. Here's a little Lombardi. Here's a little Cone. Here's a little Haberman. Here's a little Nick Wright. On and on we go. Not great. So this comment, but I thought the Niners was never trying to trade me, is an argument that Brandon Aiyuk is having with the internet. He does have a beef and an argument with the 49ers, but that's a different argument. How do I know that? Because unless the Niners have told him behind closed doors, we've never listened to an offer, which I doubt they've said, because they've said publicly several times anything but we're not listening to offers. Unless they've said that to him, then the only people that have said the Niners have never tried to trade Brandon Aiyuk are people outside of the building. How do we know this? Well, here's a bunch of clips of the Niners not denying
It's logical to think that it would have taken
to offers on Brandon Aiyuk. These are all from the same night after the first round of the NFL draft. The Niners had a press conference, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, 12 and a half minutes. They drafted Ricky Pearsall. There'd been reports about Deebo. There'd been reports about Aiyuk. And the second round was still ahead. So remember that night, Thursday night, you're thinking, if they're going to trade one of these guys, it would have been for a first rounder, right? Probably. Okay. Here now, that's the backdrop that leads to all of these questions. Let's go through these answers, and you tell me if at any point the 49ers give the impression they're not open for business on Brandon Aiyuk.
It's logical to think that it would have taken something in the first round for you guys to consider trading Brandon, and now that the first round is over, that's unlikely that you would move him.
Yeah, I thought it was unlikely going into it, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen. So, I mean, you listen to everything. Everything's about trying to improve our team as much as we can for 2024 without with jeopardizing 25 as much as possible. So that's everything you look into, and whenever that opportunity comes, whichever way, if you can improve your team, you do that. Sometimes it's hard to picture proving your team, though, without them.
All right. So that was a question from Kawakami. So first thing there, right? I think that's pretty clear. You don't need a magnifying glass to read between these lines. We don't want to trade him. That is true. If we're playing the true or false game, it's true. They don't want to trade him. But yeah, we listened. Yeah, we'll listen. Let's keep going.
If teams didn't know you were open for business at receiver, they definitely do now. Are you going to get calls through the night? Do you plan on this going through to when teams are on the clock tomorrow? Is this kind of the reality now for you guys?
I can't predict, what we're going to get. I'm going to go home, go to bed, wake up, come in here tomorrow, and fire it up and try to add some more really quality players to our team. This is always an exciting process, and looking forward to it.
All right, so John Lynch, he's not interested in going down the road that'll lead him to having to deny that he'll pick up the phone if somebody calls, because he's not going to deny it.
You were close on anything. Did you think you were close on any trades at all to move up or down?
No. Yeah.
Correctly, 2 years ago when you got through the first round with Deebo, you said nothing came close. I think you said we're not going to trade him. Something. Is this a little different with Brandon? That it's still kind of on the table?
I'm getting mature, I think, as I get older. Everything's always on the table.
Oh. Okay. No one said there we're not trying to trade Aiyuk.
I think that's a better answer for me. It doesn't seem that likely, to be honest, but I'm still on the table. If someone offers Jed and John some good stuff for me, I'm going to be out of here, I'm sure. So it's, no.
Yeah, I'm quick to go.
Effect of knowing you have these two receivers, or could be very, if you sign Brandon, it could be very expensive. If you all that comes into play. But I think the hardest thing when guys look at needs and stuff and rosters, especially when it's a position that's not quarterback, where lots of guys play and you have different personnel packages, like needs aren't always so obvious just that year. They can become a lot bigger in the second year. They can be bigger in the first year. You never know how someone's going to play out. So that need can be extremely important right now or come training camp. But you also know we have to get some draft picks in here of some younger guys that are for sure going to contribute just as these years go, and especially with Brock and things like that. And so all that plays into it.
Especially with Brock and things like that. So that's where he's talking about like next year, money, especially with Brock and things like that means paying Brock Purdy, right? So now he's talking about, hey, that you remember, this is like you just drafted Ricky Pearsall. Are you replacing Brandon Aiyuk right now? Are you replacing Deebo right now? So he's saying like this is part of the bigger picture. He mentions special teams, right? Ricky Pearsall in theory is their returner. And then if there was any doubt about whether or not the 49ers were denying that they were open for business on Brandon Aiyuk, there's this last clip where Eric Branch asks
it would have taken
question. Let me get to that.
It can be extremely important right now. Draft pick.
Let's see. Let me get to that one. Oh, I thought I had it ready to roll. Do it live.
That plays into it.
Here we go. All right. And then hard cut, tell the editor, and then there's this.
Clarify, you guys have said can't close the door on a trade for Aiyuk. Is that the same for Deebo?
What? We didn't close the door on, like I said, we don't close the door on anything. I think that's what I said. Did you change my words? All right. Probably. All right.
Let's get that
We
question
didn't close
again.
the door and go. And
Let's just make
especially
sure
with
we get the
Brock and
wording
things
on
like
this
that.
question
And so
correct.
all that plays into it.
Just to clarify, you guys have said can't close the door on a trade for Aiyuk. Is that the same for Deebo?
What? Close the door. And like I said, we don't close the door on anything.
We don't now. Okay, so Kyle always kind of puts that in the oh well, we could all be dead tomorrow, which is true. But he always kind of adds that to add a little levity to the fact that he's saying something that he means, which is why would I close the door? So I don't know. I didn't keep track there, but what was that, like 4 or 5 chances to deny it and not deny it? Now, that doesn't mean they want to trade him. It doesn't mean they are trading him. It doesn't even mean they're shopping him. It just means that this idea that they're not like open for business, quote unquote, does not come from them. It's coming when Brandon Aiyuk is fighting this fight about, I thought they weren't trying to trade me. He's not, he's fighting fights on 2 fronts right now. And that's exhausting. That's why I say, people are like, oh, well, I've had a lot of these comments. Like, I have no interest. Like, this guy's making $14 million this year. I don't want to hear him complain, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, it's June. So turn it don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. But it affects nothing in your world. I do understand, and I've said it, in his industry, there is a cost associated with guys that produce like him at his position, and that cost is higher than his. But here's the problem, and this is why I say, for him, this could get worse before it gets better. Right now, Brandon Aiyuk has done everything he's been asked to do as a football player. He got drafted, they agreed to a salary, and he's played really well. But if he wants the leverage that is built in for the teams get to start with the leverage, with the exception of the best of the best of the best of the best. Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa got to start with the leverage and maintain the leverage. But the exception of guys like that, it starts with the team having the leverage. If the player wants to transfer the leverage from the team to themselves, they have to risk a lot. They have to be willing to give up potentially a lot. So if Brandon Aiyuk wants to shift the leverage from the 49ers to himself, there's only one way to do that. And the way to do that is to play this year without signing a contract extension, play on the 5th-year option, and then know that even though people will say next year, oh, the Niners still have the leverage, they've got the franchise tag, there is no chance in hell you're going to play 2025 on the franchise tag. There is no way the 49ers would play Brandon Aiyuk next year on the franchise tag. But to get there, you've got to really put yourself on the line. You don't get the leverage by not taking the risks. And the risks are you might get hurt. The risks are, and this is really the risk, right? You put yourself in a weird spot because all of a sudden you're pissed off, but you're in a contract year. So being pissed off better translate to you having a great season, because how much money you make is going to be directly tied to how good your 2024 was. You can't go, yeah, but 2023, when I wasn't pissed, I was really good. 2024, I was distracted. 2024, you just pay me, I won't be distracted again, right? So you risk having a distracted and down season. You risk, maybe this is less of a risk, but you risk messing with team chemistry. But if you can walk that tightrope, then your reward is the leverage. To quote the great American orator, Bruce Arians, you got to risk it for the biscuit. And to this point, there's been no risk. There's been no risk. And you would love, I understand, I really do. You would love for it to just work out. Just, guys, just pay me right now. I'll be your guy. We'll do this for like 7 more years, and it'll all be fine. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. And so the question is, how much are they offering? 26, 27, 28. How much does he want? 31, 32, 33. Look at your boy. I can count. And is he willing to risk a whole season making, 14, but not really 8? Is he willing to do all that to get himself some leverage? Because then you can do, they'll tag him. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to tag and trade me to a place I don't want to go, because that place is going to want to make sure that I'm going to agree to a contract, because they also nobody wants you playing on the tag. So they got to make sure that I'll agree to a contract before they trade for me. So he's not in a good spot. I think it starts like this a lot. You get on the internet, you're like, I'm going to mess with people. And then you just realize you're on the internet too much. And the internet in itself, not inherently evil, but it's just not a safe space for your brain if you're not in a good place. And I think what's happening is that he's fighting battles on two fronts. So maybe he's been watching YouTubes. Maybe he's been reading comments. The Schefter thing, if you saw what Schefter said the other day, he said they talked with Washington. They didn't want to do a deal. Speaking of Washington, but why wouldn't Washington want to do a deal? Well, because the price is too high, right? Did they have a deal was there a deal on the table that they both would have agreed to? And then the Niners said, all right, let's do this deal. And Washington's like, on second thought, no. That's not the impression that I got from that Schefter report. I think that's probably unlikely. But did he sit down with John Lynch, and John Lynch said, we're not trying to trade you? And then he hears the Schefter thing, like, yes, they are. They are trying to trade me. Maybe it's semantics, right? Maybe there's a difference between trying and trying can mean a lot of things. Like if you're on the phone with Washington and you're asking for a first, I guess in a way, like, yeah, we're trying to do a trade. That's true. That's a little different than we are trying to offload this guy and get him out of here, which I'm sure is what John Lynch said to him. We're not trying to do that. We want you here, but not on the terms that you're asking for. And if you want to get the leverage to really find a way to get the terms you're asking for, and I don't think John Lynch said this, you've got to risk more. That's just the reality. You want more leverage, you got to risk more. By the way, hey, thanks to my sponsor, Circa Sports. Right now, go to circasports.com, click on contest. 2 big contests going on. You can sign up right now through the beginning of September, like the first week of September, right up to the opener. And it's awesome. $16 million in guaranteed prizes. You sign up in Nevada, then you can play legally from anywhere through a proxy, which you sign up with there. Last year, there's 2 prizes. There's 2 contests. The Circa Survivors, $10 million to the guaranteed winner or winners. This is you pick one game, not against the spread, every week. Okay. And the longer you go undefeated, the further you get. Last year, 4 winners split the pot of $9.2 million. The pot's up to $10 million guaranteed minimum. So it was $2.3 million each last year. It made it the largest legal football contest in history. That's Circa Survivor. Then there's also Circa Million, which is $6 million minimum guaranteed prizes. This is also great. You pick 5 games a week with the spread. You just keep going throughout the year. And then at the end, whoever did the best wins the pot. There's also a booby prize for the person that does the worst of $100,000. This is a great one way to do this would be you can do it yourself, or you can get 4 other people together. You each pick a game that week. That'd be just an idea. I'm just thinking out loud. Entries open now and close September 7th, 2 p.m. You got to go to Vegas, to Circa Sports in Vegas, in Henderson, or in Reno Sparks area. You can go do it there as well. If you're going, Niners Raiders is the last preseason week Friday night. They're going to have a big event, kind of a Radio Row type thing at Circa Sports. I'm going to try and get there. Not sure if I'll be there for that. But either way, if you're going to Vegas or Reno, or you're looking for an excuse to, Circa Million, Circa Survivor, sponsor of the show, which is great. And go check them out. Enter Nevada, play from anywhere. Visit circasports.com for more information. Click on contest there and check out more about how it works. All right, let's get to some of your comments here. Invader says, if I was Aiyuk's advisor, I'd tell him to put the phone down until this is over. Hard to do, right? What the agent wants from the player, how much trust, in this case, Ryan Williams is the agent, established, legit agent, right? I don't know that I've heard an agent talk about this, but there's probably a fine line, especially before you've gotten a player his first contract. You work for the player. Now, you're the expert, and the player should listen to you, but it's an emotional time. I remember talking to an agent, I don't know, a month or two ago about a situation where his player was unhappy and people were chirping, and he's like, I got to get on a plane. I got to fly to the guy, and we got to sit down and have a real conversation about what do you want? Here's what I'm going to do for you. But you got to calm down and let me do my job. I think that's a pretty common conversation between agents and players. But before you've gotten the player paid, you're kind of in a tough spot because obviously you've got a relationship. The player trusts you, but he's in a sensitive position. And the best way to show me you love me is to get me the money. Get me Amon-Ra. Get me, look at Justin Jefferson, look at A.J. Brown. I don't want to hear about, there's so much truth in Jerry Maguire. I don't want to hear how much you love me. I want you to show me how much you love me, right? And so I don't know. I'm sure they've had some of those conversations, I'd imagine, but it's tough because like, hey, man, I want to do this deal for you, but you got to be careful. You never know at any moment a person in a frustrated state could go, you know what? If you can't get this done for me, I'm going to find somebody else who can. And that's a challenge. But, there haven't been any indications of how the meeting went. And the fact that they had the meeting and then you had the Instagram comment tells you that if I don't know the purpose of it, but if Brandon thought he was going to air his grievances and kind of melt John Lynch's heart, that probably didn't happen. And it wasn't going to happen. Right. And it's tough, I think, for John Lynch because he doesn't want to do this every offseason. He doesn't want to do this every offseason. Is this stuff going to drive? It's like if I were Bezos, when all this is going on, this is when I'm sending John Lynch text messages. Like, hey, man, just checking in. Just want you to know we're still here. You never know. McVay might retire before you. And, if I'm paying McVay $25 million a year to do Thursday Night Football, that could have been you. So there's a little urgency here, Mr. Lynch. This would be the time because this has got to be one of the worst parts of John Lynch's job. The beauty for the coach is you're like, hey, man, I stay out of it. Brandon, I love to have you back, man. Brandon's like, Kyle, aren't you technically John Lynch's boss? Yeah. Well, I try to stay out of it though. Anthony says he should do a hold in, show up in camp, and all of a sudden your hamstrings don't feel so great. The problem, as I said, is you're in a contract year until you sign this contract. So until you do a deal, anything you do to hurt the team hurts you. So if you're not practicing, if you're not working with Brock Purdy, if you're not building some sort of chemistry with your teammates, right? Continuing to build new teammates, then you're, I don't know who said this, cutting off your nose to spite your face. It's like, hey, I've got a tactic here to get me paid. But if it doesn't, the risk is if it doesn't work right now, if I don't get paid before this year, now I'm playing on the 5th-year option, which some of you may recall I said after the Super Bowl, I actually predicted was the most likely outcome here. I don't know if that's still the case, but it's, if that's what happens, then you understand that I'm going to go pull that clip because I've talked about it a lot, although we've talked about it less lately. But if you don't get paid before the season, now this year is a contract year. And all of a sudden, all that camp you missed, all that time you spent working out alone, but not with the team, the preseason game you missed, the money you're giving up, all of a sudden, all of that stuff actually hurts you in addition to hurting the team. It hurts both because they need you, right? That's what he knows. He's like, you guys need me. And they're like, yeah, we're pretty sure we do need you. If we want to win a championship, you're a pretty important part of this thing. So please get here and get healthy. And Brandon's like, well, just, pay me and I'll be there. And they're like, no. So Brandon's like, okay, I won't. And then he's playing week 1 and pulling an hamstring. So it's such a risk for him. And that's why I said, if you want the leverage, you've got to be willing to do the uncomfortable stuff. And this is uncomfortable, but it's June 26th. You're posting from your couch, right? Like playing the year without a guaranteed contract beyond the season. That's the risk. That's real risk. Like that is real risk. And that's just the cold, hard truth of what it takes for him to get the leverage that he desires. Old Dirty Hungus commenter says only way he gets traded is for a haul that can play day one. Can't tell Trent and other vets they're willing to take a step back right now. And they're not willing to take a step back right now. Ryan, good comment here. Says the problem is that there's like 2 people in the league who could have replaced Bosa during his negotiations. Brandon Aiyuk is an elite player. He is one of the best players in the NFL. He is one of the best players at his position. He's not Nick Bosa. Right? I mean, there's just that the number of people who are Nick Bosa is really small. And to Ryan's point, Ricky Pearsall ain't Brandon Aiyuk, right? I don't even know. What are the odds that Ricky Pearsall turns into Brandon Aiyuk? Right now, I'd put it at, 20% feels way too high. Now, if you put that a different way and say, if you draft 10 Ricky Pearsalls, 2 of them turn into Brandon Aiyuk, that feels reasonable. Like when I say it that way, 20% doesn't feel too high. When I say 20% as like 1 in 5, that feels high. So I don't know, mathematicians. Can I say 20% but mean the 2 out of 10 and not the 1 out of 5 version? Because if I can, then I'll say 20%. So you got people. You got Deebo, you got Kittle, you got Jennings, you got people to throw the ball to. The fall off with Bosa, A, is humongous. And B, he's just a better. I mean, it's like you got nobody behind him, and he's a tier 1 guy. So Bosa Bosa came into the league. Some people don't like when I say this, that what you come into the league with partly establishes how your second contract goes. Well, I said that last time a few weeks ago, and some people thought it was illogical. And maybe as a general statement, maybe it doesn't. But for some people, like you come in as Bosa, you get all right. Nick Bosa comes in the league, he's got leverage. Hold out. Win. He wins. Then he is a great player. He's everything and more that they wanted him to be. And so you just kind of the leverage only got bigger. He came in with leverage, got more leverage. That's not the situation that Brandon Aiyuk is. And yeah, I mean, to Ryan's point, some of it is just fundamentally that you can't I don't think you can replace Aiyuk right now. But you at least got a shot to spread the ball around in a way that you don't have with Nick Bosa. So there's no way in hell the Niners trade him this year. I mean, unless they find a player suddenly. The one thing you'd say with them is they've been through this before many times. Many times. By the way, hit that like, subscribe to this channel. If you're listening to the podcast, thanks. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I think you have to be using an iPhone and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it helps. 5 stars, leave a question in that. And that's a great way to help the show and get into the mailbag. As I mentioned earlier, you can also go heyguy.co mailbag. This situation seems worse than what happened with Deebo. Comment. Is this situation worse than what happened with Deebo? I mean, the Deebo thing got really messy. There was the Jeff Darlington report that he requested a trade. So it doesn't feel worse than with Deebo. At that time, his agent had A.J. Brown, who got traded and signed. I think his agent had DK, who got signed. I think that's how that situation went. Now Deebo, in hindsight, he does these press conferences. He's like, yeah, I'm just trying to give Aiyuk advice. But I hadn't thought about that. My gut reaction is the Deebo situation felt worse because it felt like he wasn't even talking to the 49ers. The fact that Aiyuk wants to go meet with them, he can tweet about Mike Tomlin, but it's some evidence that you want to be back. And I also think it's just evidence that this is, to go back to my list of who this sucks for the most, number one being Brandon Aiyuk. It sucks to be in this position. And no one's going to hear your complaints. Like a fan base and the media, we don't care if you're making $14 million. That's high-end YouTuber money. You're not going to get any sympathy on that. But and the point of me saying this is not to create any for Aiyuk. At the end of the day, though, you're just another person trying to get what you think you deserve. And that is a very, very, very simple human situation to be in. And it kind of sucks when I think he feels like he's screaming into the void and it doesn't accomplish anything, because it doesn't. It doesn't. That's the cold, hard truth of the situation. So that's not to, that is not to, I'm not telling anybody. I never tell a fan like, hey man, like, no. You should have some sympathy here. Whatever. But I get it. I do get it. Comment, he has too much free time on his hands. Yeah, you can work out 6 hours a day if you want. That still leaves 18. Now you sleep for 8. That leaves 10. Maybe I did that math right. Steve says BA will blink first. The fact is he has no choice. He cannot take this as far as you have to take. You have to take it so far. And look how far it went with Bosa. And they had nobody they couldn't even pretend to replace Nick Bosa last year. Let's just say if Nick Bosa was like, I'm going to miss week 1. They had nothing. If Aiyuk says I'm going to miss week 1, they got a shot to create that production somewhere else. Comment from Jason. I think Deebo's situation felt worse because Aiyuk wasn't viewed as elite yet. Interesting. That is a good point, right? So the Niners receiving core maybe had some more questions at the time. You didn't have Jennings quite developed as well. Deebo was like the clear number 1. Another comment on that. This situation seems better than Deebo still, but it could get as bad. It seems like Aiyuk is using Deebo's playbook. Steve says Conley and Pearsall as rookies may well fill the Aiyuk Cowing. I think Jacob Cowing from Arizona, Ricky Pearsall from ASU in Florida could very well fill the Aiyuk void. One opening up the defense due to his speed. The other has the ability to get open. I would say that's an optimistic view of it. OTAs, Cowing was a non-factor. Wasn't even available every day. Maybe it turns into that. I would say if just one of those guys is ready to contribute, and at this point, it's much more likely that it's Ricky Pearsall, than it is Jacob Cowing. That's what happened after the draft was everybody wanted to like get on the Cowing train. And I'm pro Jacob Cowing. I like him. I watched him, covered him a lot at Arizona when I was doing Pac-12 stuff. But there's this feeling that like Pearsall was overdrafted. And the Niners didn't have a first round grade on him. They basically, I think Grant asked John Lynch, "You have a first round grade on him?" And John Lynch laughed. This was the night after the pick or the night of the pick. John Lynch he laughs. And he says, "Oh, well, we like Ricky Pearsall." So whatever, that's fine. But because of it, people I think were more likely to attach to the Cowing thing. Like, oh, this is value. But the reality is that Ricky Pearsall was higher on their board. He was higher on most people's, probably everybody's boards. And it's just more likely to contribute right away because they have Jennings and Deebo and Kittle, and we'll see, maybe another tight end. I think it's unlikely, barring some injuries, that like both of these guys are producing in an equal way, right? It's like, 50% Pearsall, 50% Cowing. I think it's more likely to be a lot of Pearsall. Comment from Artemis: take my money for the 262 hat. I was just texting with Steve, who runs the state of California when it comes to team merch. I mean, really, like, runs the state of California. And I think I should have some new samples in my hand, hopefully at the end of the week. It better be at the end of the week because I'm going to Portugal on Sunday. So, speaking recommendation, direct flight. I haven't been on it yet, but it exists. Comment from Michael: if Aiyuk plays on the 5th-year option and balls out, he'll get $35+ million for the Niners or another team next year! Exclamation, exclamation, fire emoji. Yep. I don't know if it's 35 plus, but it's more than he wants right now. Is he willing to risk it? Zubin says Purdy's future success seems to be directly linked to having Aiyuk around. Invest in Purdy and Aiyuk for the future. Plus, Aiyuk is an awesome blocker in the run game. Pay him fair value. That's what they think they're doing. I agree with the first part of this. Aiyuk and Purdy have a very good relationship. Part of this goes to, where's this comment? From Truth, he says, and this is related to Zubin's comment: Aiyuk is a hardworking wide receiver, blocking, availability, route running, but he is not elite. I think he's a tier 2 receiver on a small tier. I think tier 1 is a very small tier. He's not Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. That's tier 1. He's not that, but he's also, I think he's kind of in a tier by himself. Maybe a couple other guys there, but he's also not like a tier 3 guy. So it's complicated. That said, he has a value to the 49ers, right? Because he does all of those things. A wide receiver that blocks is really important to them. Availability, because Deebo can be banged up. McCaffrey can get banged up. Availability is really important to them. His route running is critical to them. Having a receiver that is very detailed in being at the right place at the right time is a big deal, because Brock Purdy throws with so much anticipation. I do think that is where Aiyuk and Purdy specifically really match. The downside of Brock's arm not being Justin Herbert's arm is that he has to make decisions earlier. Now, you can get away with that, or you can do that, right? If you process quickly, if you have guts, if you see it before it's open. So for that to work, though, the receiver has to be where he's supposed to be, because Brock is throwing it to a place sometimes, right, where he's gonna be. Whereas Justin Herbert can wait, and like the dude's there, and he just it gets there, right? It doesn't work that way with Brock. So Brock Purdy needs receivers who are where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. And Aiyuk does that for the most part, right? You can't just kind of ad lib and, this round, I felt like doing this. Well, okay, but the quarterback threw the ball already. It's over there. So they're a really good match. And I think that's the challenge, is like, okay, well, here's Ricky Pearsall or receiver X who kind of has these skills. Maybe he could become that guy. He's a good route runner. Okay. But you still You just got to do it like with the pads on, which is what Brandon Aiyuk has done. Eric says, pay Aiyuk and let Purdy walk. Sorry, Brock, fresh out of cap space. What a shame. Good luck with the Raiders. Comment from Ian. He says, McCaffrey changed the catch volume for Kittle and the receivers. He really did. I mean, Christian got 83 targets last year. Maybe that number will come down this year. Maybe it won't. But it doesn't change how important the targets are. I've said this a few times. But, just because you throw it less doesn't mean when you throw it less, your pass attempts are more important than if you throw it 40 times. When you throw it 22 times, those are higher value. That's why sometimes the yards per attempt is really high, right? They're really important when they throw the ball. No one has ever watched the Niners and gone, oh, these times they throw the football. I don't think that was a serious Purdy take. These times they throw the football, they don't matter as much. So even though all the targets and the ratio of the targets has changed, they're still incredibly important. So I think it's what I have for you guys. All right. Thanks for hanging. That's that for this. And yeah, that's that for this. Okay. I'll talk to you else. Oh, maybe back later Wednesday with another stream in the afternoon. So keep an eye out for that.